Great, thank you for coming today. Our panel is How to Retire Gracefully. And our panelists today will be Karen Selden, Mary Staats, Donna Williams, and David Selden. And we are going to have each of them introduce themselves.
All right, well, I'm first up. I am the newest retiree in this group. We met earlier and had some good discussions. And I am sort of transitioning into retirement. As of October 8th, I had retired from being the Metadata Services Librarian at the University of Colorado's Law Library. And on November 1st, I transitioned into a part-time temporary position with them as doing metadata work to help them transition until they could hire my replacement. And it's kind of helping me transition into retirement myself. So I work virtually 2 days a week. So I'm keeping my finger in the pie, but I'm also helping them out. So it's sort of a win-win situation.
I'm Mary Staats, and I worked at Farella, Braun, and Martel for just short of 30 years, and some other law firm libraries before that. I retired in 2016, but my retirement really began in 2012, where I switched places with Judy Heyer, and because I had been grooming her for managing the library, and I worked 3 days a week. So it was not as hard to leave as it might have been, because I've gradually moved out. And actually, I would have been happy working 3 days a week, except the executive director kept saying, "When are you going to retire? When are you going to retire?" And I thought maybe I am beginning to slow down and show my age. Where I retired at 70. Okay. And I also had by then 2 grandkids that I really wanted to spend time with. But right after I announced that I was retiring, San Francisco Law Library called me and asked if I'd be interested in working 1 or 2 Saturdays a month. And I thought, well, that doesn't sound too bad. That might be interesting. And so I started working there, and about not quite a year later, Emily Bergfeld from Alameda County Law Library asked if I'd like to work there on a Saturday or 2 a month. So it worked out that I've been working at both of them. And then San Francisco closed during COVID, and it's still closed. But a lot of people at Alameda also decided to retire when COVID closed down everything. So Emily was shorthanded, and I offered to work 2 days a week. So I now am sort of regularly employed, still a temp, 2 days a week at Alameda, and I might work at San Francisco if they come back.
I'm Donna Williams, and I retired from the California Judicial Center Library. Retired earlier than I had expected due to just unforeseen circumstances that came up. But it was my dream job, and I was really sorry to leave it. But I've been a NOCALL member since '84. And looking back, it's like I've worked at Farella, Braun, and Martel, where I started my career. Dialogue, for those of you who remember computer searching.
Dialogue.
Yeah. And then I went to Wilson Sonsini, the Court of Appeal, and then USF for 5 years, and then at the Supreme Court. So it was pretty awesome. Yeah. But it's been pretty nice. Ended up retiring in October of 2019. We moved to Paso Robles, and then COVID hit, and I was going to volunteer in the Historical Society and do all this stuff. I was all excited, but I'm not going out there until more people get vaxxed. And yeah, so we'll see, but enjoying it very much.
Oh, hi, I'm David Selden. I'm related to Karen Selden. And I retired from the Native American Rights Fund, nonprofit law firm, and National Indian Law Library, a public function of NARF. about 2 years ago. And before that, I worked 11 years at a private law firm in New Hampshire. Yeah, I've been out for 2 years, and I've been looking forward to. I had jumping ahead of myself with other questions when they come up, but I guess that's it for now. That's where I'm at.
That's
And I'll just circle back for a minute. David and I both took relatively early retirement before official retirement age. I was able to do that at the university because I had enough years in at the university. I had been a little over 23 years at the University of Colorado. So that was kind of nice to be able to have that flexibility. Because at the university, once you hit early retirement age, there's no incentive to stay other than your paycheck. Yes, but they don't offer you extra incentives to work into your 60s or 70 or however long you want. So.
Okay, so my first question for the panel is, what is retirement like? How, I guess we framed it when we talked about this is, how are you doing retirement? And let's go ahead and start with Donna.
Thank you. I actually thought I'd have a really hard time, and my husband was really worried about me too. But I remember a colleague who retired years ago, and she said, I don't know how I had time to work. So I kind of feel like that. I'm like doing all these hobbies, and we moved to a different town. So, wanting to explore, but it's nice to have hobbies again. And I'm really enjoying retirement a lot. I almost feel guilty about that, but it's pretty awesome. I mean, there's so much to do. Your life isn't just defined by being a law librarian. So, and I always thought that, I mean, it's a huge part of who I am, but it's nice to find other things.
Oh, even in my short time, I think I mirror what Donna's saying, that it is nice to be able to be on your own schedule a little bit more. David will be the first one to corroborate that I am not a morning person. So it is nice to be able to sleep in and wait till the sun is up to go out to run rather than, finishing a morning run and having when the sun's finally coming up and then have to rush off to work. It hasn't felt like a bad transition at all for me. Again, I have some hobbies I've been working on. We are, like Donna has done, David and I will be moving in a few months to a new town. So decluttering is a big project. Those are big projects I'm doing too.
I can add that that I never thought of myself as retiring. It's just kind of weird. Retiring to me sounds kind of like giving up or something. And so it was a little difficult to think in that way, other than I had other interests, and I felt that I'd done mostly what I wanted to do at my current place of employment, and I didn't really want to have a career shift to go somewhere else or move or whatever. So I wanted to explore things that I enjoyed more, and so I ended up enrolling into a course to become a certified health coach, which I am now. And I saw Sarah Lynn here somewhere, but via Sarah Lynn, I'd heard about a part-time remote position at Presidio Graduate School. And it looked like a great opportunity. I ended up taking a job as a part-time remote librarian for the graduate school, which has programs in business and sustainability. And it's kind of, I have interest in, especially in sustainability. So it fit really nicely. So thank you, Sarah. And really enjoying that. It's only about 7 hours a week, but I manage a digital library and help the students and faculty with their research challenges.
Well, when I first retired, I went back to, I had spent many weekends working at a bead store. in Berkeley for beads, for credit for beads. And they had just closed the store, but had opened a website. And they needed some help because they lost all their employees when they closed the store. So I went there a couple of afternoons a week, just putting beads in vials. Doesn't sound very exciting, but somehow if you go in and you have a job to do, you're really a great worker. I think that retired people are great workers. And then I met somebody who had a chocolate shop, and she needed some help over the holidays. So I was wrapping chocolates and seeing how that whole thing went. And then I started working at both Alameda and San Francisco, but that still was only Saturdays at first. So I filled my days with water aerobics and bar method classes. So I had something to do every day, and that got me out of the house. Otherwise, I was just kind of grazing, I'd do something and think, it's time to eat again. And it didn't seem very healthy. So now I'm like too busy. And I always have one afternoon a week with my grandkids. So I've run out of time, but I enjoy it. It's much better giving, I think, than just sitting home and puttering. I like it.
So sounds like we kind of found our own schedules in a way. Yeah, found the things that delight us and add those into our lives. And I'm sorry, Kristen.
No, please. All right, so our next question, what advice do you have for future retirees on how to plan or prepare for retirement? When is a good time to start? Donna, did you have a response?
I would just say plan as early as you can. If you're in your 20s, start 30s, 40s. I mean, start as soon as you can.
If you have a 401k or an IRA, start squirreling it away.
Yes.
I always advised my the people I worked with, put money in the 401k. It's pre-tax dollars. You end up taking home about the same, but it will grow. If you stay at a place for 30 years, even in the downturn of the early part of the 21st century, it's definitely worth it. Even a small amount. I think it's really important.
Yeah, I agree with that. You can't start too early, and no amount is too little because it grows. So that's a really good thing. I know as we were talking among ourselves a while back, one of the strategies that I like that Donna mentioned is whenever she went on vacation, she and her husband would sort of scope places out thinking, oh, wouldn't this be a place to retire? And David and I had done that too. We're in an interesting position because we do not have children. So we're a little bit more flexible and free. But when we would travel, we would kind of think about, maybe we'd like to relocate. And indeed, that's what brought us from New Hampshire to Colorado to begin with. We fell in love with the mountains in the West. And in our retirement, we have targeted Steamboat Springs as the place we really want to go, a little deeper and further into the mountains than we are now in the foothills above Boulder. So it's kind of nice to sort of dream, sort of think about those things. But as I was thinking about this earlier today, I thought it's good to have dreams, but make sure they're kind of more inspirational and aspirational. Don't kind of make them into something that's kind of all consuming. Like, oh, my goal is I'm going to retire at 62 and I'm going to go here and I'm going to do this. It's kind of nice to dangle that carrot a little bit, I think, in our situation.
Right. I think it might be important. It was for me to envision my life beyond retirement, trying to think of what it would be like. And then I took some time to kind of get in touch with my values, what was important to me, and to look at ways to create a path to those values into my own passions to see if I could create something more meaningful, in the next stage of my life. So I think, and there are some tools that were very beneficial to me when I was studying to become a functional medicine health coach. And I can put a couple of links in the chat if anyone's interested in them, but VIA is an organization that has a character strengths survey. Maybe some of you are familiar with that, but it helps you find out what your signature strengths are and how to use those to enhance your life and give you more satisfaction either in your job or whatever you might be doing. And another thing that was helpful to me was Functional Medicine Institute had a functional medicine matrix, and it took physical and emotional values and put on a matrix and allowed you to write notes and kind of map out where you are and also determine what areas of your life you might want to work on. So those are really helpful to me, and I'll put links to both those tools. The survey is free that you can take, and it's really pretty interesting. And I took it 2 years distant. Most of my values, strengths were the same, but some of them did change, and sometimes they do during your life as you go through COVID and other things. So I think an internal examination, spending more time being mindful and meditating can help you get to realization of what's really important.
Yes, David, please put those links in the chat if you can. And did anyone else have anything they wanted to add?
I just thought I would add that unlike Donna, who sort of worked the gamut of every library in terms of law. I mean, so she worked in an academic library, she worked in a private law firm, she worked for the government. I had always worked in private law libraries, and it's definitely different than the rest of the world. And I really love working in the county law library. I really love just, if nothing else, being there to listen to people, that they seem so happy and they're so grateful for anything you can do, that you feel like, oh, it gets you completely out of yourself. And you feel like, well, this is what they mean by giving back in retirement. It makes me feel good every time I go. I love helping people, even if I mean, it's a whole different ballgame with law. It's certainly not corporate law. It's not your run-of-the-mill litigation. It's a lot of unlawful detainers and family law. But it really is a nice change, and being able to be there for other people is a wonderful feeling. Kristen, you keep moving.
Oh,
Sorry about that.
no, that's right. Donna, you had a really cool story about how you sort of planned. I loved your vacation stories, actually.
So when we had done a cross-country trip in 2003, so 8,000 miles around the entire country, trying to figure, like, if we were to leave California, where would we live? Well, 8,000 miles, and we love California. I wouldn't live anywhere else.
Wow.
So the West Coast. So pretty much all of our travels from the 2000s up, from Seattle to San Diego, we realized we want to live the coast. So we went on vacation in Seattle, Portland, all the little towns. And we met with realtors each time to see, like, the housing situation, the living, the community. So we had really been planning this a long time. And then we ended up doing a baseball trip in California to all the different stadiums and came through Paso. And it was just like, and I had friends that loved Paso and go out to Cambria all the time. And we had never really spent time here other than going through it to get to Southern California. And we fell in love with the area. So we were able to buy a home down here. And our daughter moved down last year, and we helped her purchase a home on an acre lot. Now she's got goats and everything. But it's been good for the whole family. But like I said, you can never start planning too early. So if we always thought our kids grew up in Sunnyvale, we always thought we'd stay there. Well, circumstances changed, and I got a job in the city and moved to the city and stuff. And then circumstances changed. So you just have to be flexible.
Yeah.
So, and I love it down here. And I've had several librarians actually come and visit, so that's been kind of nice. So, but it's been great.
Cool.
But start now. You can't plan too early.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really helpful advice. I feel like it's really opened my eyes in terms of thinking about the future. All right, so do you have any thoughts about how to exit gracefully from your workplace? Are there any special considerations based on the type of workplace, for example, law firm, university, nonprofit, government, etc.? And we can start with David this time.
Okay. Yeah, I think the most important thing, I was in a fairly small library, so we knew each other pretty well, but to have a real open communication with folks and give as much advance warning as possible. I actually told library staff about my planned exit before I mentioned it to administration. You know, give the staff time to, you know, ask questions and, you know, make a transition. I went through a kind of informally with a guide on a lot of things that, you know, only I probably knew about that someone else might want to know about, and put together a guide and had other staff look it over and make sure they understood it and could use that guide. And then the other thing I tried to do, because I know with libraries, they're always, well, not always, often libraries or organizations that have libraries look for ways to, you know, to trim their budgets. And I was a little leery of, you know, having the library be diminished in some way. So I spent a lot of time with the board and with corporate officers, and, you know, beforehand explaining clearly what I thought our value was to them and to the community, and offering even some extra like educational opportunities and other things so we could showcase what the library could do, because I was really concerned that due to budget constraints that there might be a cut of a position, which would have been fairly drastic for a already small library. So so I tried to lay the groundwork the best I could for that. And then when I left, they didn't, I guess the other librarian replaced my position, but they didn't replace that position until I think just recently. So I feel like maybe I didn't do such a great job, but eventually we got back to, I think, where the library should be at a minimum to serve, especially in its service to the public.
Well, in my case, because I had been at Farella for almost 30 years, there's a lot of institutional memory there that is helpful to pass on, because things come up periodically that somebody will go, well, don't you remember when this, or where's that box of archived photos of everybody? There's lots to know. Fortunately, I had 3 years with Judy to try to give her as much information as possible. And so I think it's just really good to have everybody knowing things, keep the communication open, and regurgitate as much as you can before you leave.
I think it also depends on what position you have. Like if you're like the director, you know, I ended up giving like a 6-month notice. I think if it's a different kind of position, it just depends on your institution.
Yeah.
But I would rather give more notice than less, you know,
Yeah.
just so they can prepare. And like David did, I think that's great that you know, kept trying to push to keep positions.
Mhm.
So.
And yeah, coming from a university background, I think any of us who work in a university know that it takes a while to replace somebody. So I gave as much notice as I could. Of course, depending on your institution, sometimes you might be like a lame duck. But I let my supervisor know in late May that I'd be leaving in September. So we could start that sort of succession process and training people. We had always aspired to try to keep some really good documentation for people. We had a wiki that we used, especially in the tech services department. To be fair, it was hard to keep it up a lot when you're trying to keep up with your normal work, but that was incentive to kind of get that as up to date as possible. And I was up front saying I'm willing to work part-time temporary for as long as you need me or feel you need me or want me. And that was, I think, very helpful for them too. As it turns out, they won't even start advertising my position until 2022, just the way that all falls. So, I don't expect anyone to come in and start till probably at least the end of spring semester 2022 or longer. So that was kind of nice to be able to offer that little olive branch. But yeah, kind of the succession planning, the training, the documentation, I think that those, and doing whatever you can to sort of help make it smooth. Like Mary and Donna both said, you want to pass on that institutional knowledge. So I think err on the side of giving more notice than less, if you can.
Yeah, I agree.
And I would add that I'd also offered, and probably others have too, knowing that there would be still enough of boundaries, is inviting folks to contact me if something came up that they couldn't figure out, and I'll be glad to help. And it's only happened like once or twice, so I felt a little disappointed, but
Means you
but-
trained them all well.
Yeah.
You passed it on well.
well, they have their own better ideas, I think. Yeah. So
No.
Yeah.
Or sometimes it's kind of good. There's that fine line between being helpful, but letting the people who are left learn to fly on their own or take their own ideas. So you don't want to be too much of a mother hen, but you also want to be helpful. So.
Mhm.
And actually we had talked about this before. My son is in the museum field. Nobody leaves there. They're in their 60s, 70s, and 80s, and he's going to be in his 30s soon, and he can't crack it. Like, what are we doing? We're not doing these younger people any good staying in these positions until we're in our 70s and 80s. I'm sorry. That's just, and like David said, they have their own ideas and they're coming out of library school or wherever with completely new ideas. And think of how much everything's changed. I mean, when I was at Farella in the 80s, we didn't even have email. Westlaw just started.
We had the currents machine. Remember the currents machine?
It's crazy. So I think we're doing a disservice when we stay in our positions too long, because change does need to happen.
Yes.
So that's my spiel.
Yay.
And we
Good-
do
good
slow
point.
down, and we're clinging to our old ways. I mean, I realized once I hired Judy and she was fresh out of library school, I thought, wow, it's just typing, she's faster on a search list. That, you have to look at yourself and think, I may like doing this, but I'm not doing anybody any favors. I'm a little slower. I'm not as quick to grasp new technology. I had basics and stuff, but I wasn't watching every new software package that came out and understanding it really well. So I think it is important to remember there are younger people who need jobs, who have a lot to offer. And
Yeah, those are all good points, actually, because I know, just like Donna mentioned, people tell you, retired people say, oh yeah, you wonder how you ever had time to work. Well, another thing they tell you that I've heard is that when it's time sort of to pass that baton. And I was feeling that too, just like Mary and Donna had mentioned, that, I'm capable of learning, more about linked data, since I come from a tech services background, linked data, Wikidata, all those things I'm capable, but maybe I'm not the right person to carry that forward. You know, it does feel like it's the time to pass that baton to the newer people who have learned that in library school, coming out fresh and excited to implement it.
Yeah.
And I think we've always been change agents and helping everybody else with change all the time, always learning.
Mhm.
It's exhausting. It really is.
I will say I do have a love of learning, so it wasn't, I really felt very comfortable learning new things, but in my position, there were a lot of walls that I was kind of, I don't know if that's a good way of putting it, barriers that I was running up against, and I didn't see a way around those barriers, the things that I wanted to accomplish that would make me feel satisfied with my job. So I think that was part of the reason, part of what made me feel like it was maybe time to move on, that someone else may have, you know, different ideas or have different ideas to get around those barriers. So sorry, I got to wash on me.
Oh.
It's record warm here, and all the insects are coming out.
I think it's spring.
So yeah, and then of course, then I went immediately into my health coaching studies, and that was really gratifying because I like to learn. I didn't want to be sitting at home just reading, and you know, I enjoy outdoor activities, and I've been putting more effort and interest in my running. I love to cross country ski and stuff too. So planning my races and seeing how healthy I can be as I get older, and it's been a lot of fun to do that. And I know that just subtle things that I noticed in my life in the last couple of years is, you know, we used to go out, Karen mentioned going out early to run, often in the dark. But now we go out a little later and I see different neighbors, and, you know, I'll slow down and I'll stop and chat and pet their dog and whatever, and really spend some quality time. I know it's not a deep connection, but it's kind of a safe one outside with COVID. And it's really enjoyable to do that with your neighbors. So that's something I've enjoyed, being able to kind of slow down, relax. No, you don't have to gotta and keep going, you know, to get everything done that you want to get done for the day. It's like, well, you can just take a breath and relax and listen to someone else, you know, and just, you know, enjoy those kinds of connections.
Okay, so this is a question that I received from one of our NOCALL members. How can you tell that you are financially ready to retire? And can you recommend any tools that might help you do that?
I would say a financial planner is a good idea. I keep saying, I wish somebody could tell me how long I'm going to live, then I would know when I would retire. But it's a little risky figuring it out on your own. You know, it's good to get the advice of a professional who knows markets and things like that.
Definitely, I definitely second that. And if you can, try to have your house paid off or be in rent control. Just so you, because all the other expenses that come in, you know, the cell phone, the car insurance, the, you know, on and on.
PG&E.
So, yeah, yeah. We got solar now, yay. But yeah, try to have as much as you can have paid off.
Yeah.
And definitely I agree with Mary, talk to a financial planner.
Yeah.
As well, we're good in searches and everything. We're not all that. I didn't get into librarianship for math. So.
Yeah, especially a fiduciary who's looking out for your interests and not just trying to sell you the latest stocks, whatever.
Right.
Karen and I were able to work with TIAA, you know, it's common in academics, and we went through a fairly good plan, real in-depth plan together that we felt comfortable with. It was, you know, software that asks questions and you answer them, and it really took in a lot of you know, whether you thought you'd be doing any work when you left, and it would also figure in what your social security payments would be, and it was very sophisticated. So, and then it gave you a percentage of, you know, that you'll be able to retire successfully. And we had a very high percentage, mostly because we didn't have children that bankrolled us for college and everything. But Karen might want to add to that, but it was a lot easier than, I like figuring out stuff myself and doing, like someone else mentioned, doing your own research, but it is really nice to take into all the things that you may not have thought of, and then, have it paint a big picture of where you are, and what income you might have coming from a retirement fund at different ages and all, and how the laws might affect that and things. So it was really good.
Yeah.
Sometimes like the judicial branch had seminars on retirement. Man, I started going to those in my 40s. But your institution, I don't know whether academic, because I know they also put retirement seminars on. I'd say anytime you get the chance to do that, go, and you might get a nugget of advice that's really going to hit home.
Yeah, I agree with everything all three of you have said. You've really covered it well. But yeah, anything that you can get through your employer, they try to offer that, I know, a lot. So that's a good starting place.
Yeah, my biggest fear is what was mentioned earlier, living until I'm 105, and then having some kind of health issue that isn't covered, and that's gonna bankrupt you, but I figured, can't worry about everything, they're not gonna leave me out in the ditch. So I kind of gave up on that, but that was, I think, getting proper health care if and when needed was the big unknown.
Yes, that's another thing to think about when you leave your work, you leave the group insurance, or you can keep paying at a higher rate. But now there are lots of options. But some people don't know that if you sign up for like a really good insurance coverage for supplement B, and then you find that you really can't afford it and you want to go to something cheaper, maybe an Advantage plan, you can't ever go back to the higher coverage. You can always go lower, but you can't go back. And people don't always understand that. And sometimes you want the higher coverage, depending on. But to shop around, there are now consultants who help you find good medical insurance. ARP, I like ARP, but there are lots of options out there, but don't do it on your own. There are differences in each plan.
Okay, well, that's a lot to think about. And thank you for sharing those insights. We have a question that came in from an attendee. So the attendee would like to know where each of you see yourselves in 5 and 10 years. This is a new question. Anyone want to go first? David?
You want to go, David? No, or
Sure. I picture us living in Steamboat Springs and loving the hiking and the outdoors and all. And also, I picture myself having a developed but not overburdened some practice as a health and wellness coach, and making wonderful connections with people who love the outdoors through hiking groups, maybe running groups, and so I that's what my vision is being healthy as I age, and making new strong connections that would be important to me as I age.
And I'll be in David's wake. He's the faster runner and skier and hiker, but that's been as it's always been. But I agree. I will miss the people that I've met here in the Boulder area for almost 25 years now. But I feel I'm a person who can bloom where they're planted. We targeted Steamboat Springs because it's a smaller community, probably about 13,000 people. Of course, it's right in the heart of beautiful national forest, a lot of skiing, hiking, running, of course, downhill skiing. And you know, having a 4 seasons too, which is nice. Reminds us a lot of where we grew up in New Hampshire, in small rural central New Hampshire. So one of my goals is to start a new book group. I love my book group here, but start a new book group in my new neighborhood. Maybe continue doing some part-time remote cataloging, but just being able to pick and choose the things I like and want to do.
Mary or Donna? I think I saw Mary. I think you need to, unmute.
Dogs were barking, sorry.
Uh,
At my tender young age of 75, it's a little different looking ahead to 5 or 10 years, especially when I have friends and colleagues passing away right and left. I just keep hoping that I'll be ambulatory and my brain will keep going. I take all sorts of supplements for memory. And I don't know, I haven't thought ahead. I'm so grounded in Berkeley. I mean, I've lived here forever. But it is getting it's a different town, and it's awfully expensive to live in the Bay Area, but it's also a big deal to start over at this point.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'd just like to hope I can keep working and keep doing what I'm doing.
Well, I hope I can volunteer, because like I said, I wanted to join the Historical Society down here and do that. I live up at a ranch with a bunch of other people. It's a community, and they have a lot of functions that go on. They actually have a little library, but I haven't volunteered there yet. But just the hiking and be more involved in not more involved, but involved in our kids' lives. And I don't have any grandkids yet. I can wait with that. But I know it'll be a delight when that happens. But just the hiking and, and we live in wine country, so we drink a lot of wines. We will continue to do that. But just enjoy life. Honestly, that's the best part.
So this is a shorter question, and I think that perhaps Karen can answer it. What is AALL's Encore Caucus? And are there maybe other people can chime in if there are other groups for retired or soon to be retired librarians?
This is a great question. This is the AALL Encore Caucus is for people who are either retired or soon to be retired. They're very open. It's a very open, fun group of people. Caucuses do not cost any money to join. So if you're an AALL member, you can join immediately if you want. Basically, you just get on their listserv. They also have a very active Facebook page. They try to do some, maybe about quarterly, they try to do some virtual gatherings where they have a theme. One of their themes this spring was travel, places you have traveled, places you'd like to travel. Of course, that was during COVID when you couldn't travel, but it was aspirational. And it's always fun because it's a wide group of people. Like I said, some are retired. I joined it before I retired. There are a lot of names of people you will recognize. They do meet during the AALL annual meetings when there is a physical AALL annual meeting, and they usually go to lunch together and then do a little tour somewhere. I believe when they're, for example, in Washington, D.C., they had their small group tour, I think, of the Law Library of Congress. I was not able to attend, but they do some of those sort of things. So it's kind of just a nice little group that you can keep in touch with. And I think many veteran members of AALL will recognize a lot of the people who are already in that group. And maybe some of you here today are even in that group. I don't think David's joined. I don't know if Mary or Donna.
I haven't yet. I'm going to, though. I think that's going to be my Christmas present.
Ah.
lifetime double L membership.
Ah.
Good deal, good deal. But I would encourage people to reach out. I've heard ALA has a similar sort of a group, but of course, ALA tends to have more of a public library slant. This certainly will be a group of people where I think many of us here would recognize the other and have interacted before with many of the other members.
Yeah.
Anyone else have something to add to that?
Mm,
Okay, so this question is, if you were to write 1 to 2 sentences to leave for your successor in presidential tradition, and this would be for your successor to read after your departure, what would you say? Donna, do you want to start?
Yeah,
Sure.
Donna actually did this.
That's where we got the idea.
I hid it in a drawer. She found it a while later. But I wanted to wish them well in the position, explain what a fantastic staff and a great working place it was. So that was, and to reach out if you ever have any questions, I'm here. Just respect the boundaries, because I wouldn't want to overstep my boundaries. So keeping that in mind.
Do you know when your successor found your note?
It was a couple months afterward. I love that, because she had been in the position and then COVID happened. So I don't think she was really in the office. So.
Well,
So-
mine is just to be friendly and helpful to everyone in your, I'm about to lose my battery. Somebody else talk. I've got to plug in.
Okay, sounds good. So, well, I have my sentences would have a very big TS slant. I see at least a couple of TS people here who will understand this. I would say I tried to leave the catalog in good shape and leave good documentation, but I hope you don't curse all the local policies and procedures the former head of TS and I implemented. Because as we all know from catalogs, sometimes there are some interesting things that I don't. So that's kind of a joke with cataloging people, especially. But and then I would say, I hope you enjoy the university, the law school, the law library, and this job as much as I did over the years. And best wishes with the migration to folio. There's another reason to retire early. So anyhow, but I agree with Donna too. You don't want to overstep too much. You want to let them fly on their own, but let them know they can reach out too.
Yeah, I didn't write something like that, but that would be a neat idea. I would base what I would write on a sign I once saw, like around mile 20 in a marathon. The sign in the marathon said, "Pain is temporary, pride is forever." But I don't know if pain is a good word to use for librarianship. So I would say struggle is usually temporary, pride is forever. Have fun, whatever.
Mary,
I'd
are you
want to-
back?
I'm in.
Oh, go ahead.
Just good.
I
She
might-
shrinks away.
I might add something about, I had a very unique position. And I guess what would have been useful maybe is to say, don't underestimate, how important you are to your community, something like that. Because I was often surprised. I'd go to conferences and people would meet me and say, "Oh, you're David Selden. Glad to meet you. And I use this on your website, or I do this, whatever." And just, I don't know, give me such a great sense of pride that all these people that I really didn't know, they seem to know me quite well, not personally, but the work that I did and valued what I did. And you often don't see that, especially if you have a large digital collection. I guess you can get data on, hits and page views and all that, but to actually have people come up to you in a very unique position, because we provided services, or provide still, that are unique, and without us, there would be a real loss in service to the Native American community.
Yeah. Well, my perspective is like working within a firm. And so my message would just be friendly and helpful to everyone in the firm, regardless of their status, regardless of how unpleasant they may be sometimes, because sometimes you may need something where they can be a huge help. And if you don't have a good relationship, the whole place, we're all there for one goal, so to speak. It's to keep clients happy so that they'll pay their bills. And everything that you do contributes to that, no matter how important you are. So I always felt like the library, I wanted it to be a pleasant place where people could come and, the guys from photocopy could come and ask a question. I didn't want anybody to be intimidated or anything like that. And I think it worked. It gave the library a good reputation and also showed that we were willing to do what it takes to get the job done.
So are there any additional questions from attendees? You can speak up or put it in chat.
Well, while we're waiting, I just love to say, I so enjoyed meeting Mary and Donna and talking with them over time as we put this panel together. As the newest of the retirees, it was super nice.
Sweet young thing.
Learn from each of you, how to do it right.
We have a raised hand.
Right.
S. Stone, too. You can go ahead.
Thank you. Great panel. I really appreciate everyone's perspective. And I just have a question about how important was it to align the retirement with your partner, right? That you both had to retire at the same time, or was it fine to one to retire and then the other one to keep working full time or 3/4 time? Thank you so much.
What a good question.
Yeah.
I always fret about money no matter what. So, and my husband had his own business, so he really wasn't, he was just going to keep working until he was too tired to keep going. So I pretty much was squirreling away a maximum for 401k to, think in terms of, well, that will be the steady income, and the self-employment is up and down and up and down. But I think that other people make better plans out of it all than I did.
My husband ended up, he worked at Trader Joe's for 15 years and one in the city, and he retired earlier than I would have thought. So that kind of pushed me into it too, it worked out fine because we had, like I said, since our 30s, we've been talking about when we were going to retire. I just thought it was going to be another 5 years, but yeah, we both meshed, and you have to talk to your partner about it. Karen, I think Karen and David would be the perfect ones.
Together, they work it out together. I like that.
That's true. We've sort of over time evolved our thoughts on who would retire when. There's no secret here, no secrets in age here. David is older than me by 3 years. And he, way back when we were younger, I guess I just assumed he's older. He's more entrenched. He was a library director. I'm middle management. He might stay longer employed than me, But as it turned out, David retired exactly on the day he was 59 and a half. So that if we needed to get into his retirement account, that was our backup plan. I sort of just waited. I thought I would actually work a little longer, closer into my 60s, but just kind of that time just felt right, both at work and in our lives, of when to go ahead and do my retirement. So I took early retirement. We felt comfortable financially doing that. So even though I can't get into my retirement yet, but I'm close. So, so it was just kind of, it evolved over time and it felt right. Do you want to add anything, David?
Yeah, just kind of the obvious that with our financial planner, we actually figured in, the delay between the two positions and how it would factor into our overall retirement plans. So we were confident that it would work. Actually, we were quite surprised at how well we were doing. But we were just save. We put in maximum into 401k, 403b, whatever we had. And we didn't, we were kind of frugal. We're New Englanders, and we didn't go on lavish trips or cruises or anything. We enjoyed where we were. We vacationed where we were mostly, except for, visits back to New Hampshire and some family and friends on occasion. But yeah, we had talked about it with each other, so we knew, where each stood, and then also saw that the finances would work.
I think that was the key, talking with the financial advisor to understand that both of us taking early retirement would work. That helped a lot too.
Mhm.
And we both did figure in, we're both working part-time now. We did figure in some income through part-time or consulting work each year. So, and then that's actually happened as expected. Even though we didn't feel like we had to do that. So we were comfortable enough. If we didn't find something we liked, we weren't going to have to go back to work, or I wouldn't have to start, working as a waiter in a restaurant again, like I used to in college.
Okay, with that, we're about out of time. I want to, on behalf of all the attendees, I just really want to thank the panelists. This has been so interesting and so wonderful. And I would just even say inspiring. Some of the things that you talked about in your letters to successors really made me kind of proud to be a law librarian. So thank you for that. And I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, but thank you to all the attendees as well.
And thank you to Kristen for organizing this whole thing.
Thank you.
It was
Yes,
nice to see people.
Yeah.